Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films either current or classic. And this week we're definitely reviewing a current film with Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Definitely excited to jump in and talk about that. We're also celebrating a very special milestone for the Movie Bears podcast. It has officially been 7 years of the show, so we're going to be celebrating a little bit by reminiscing, maybe reading some listener comments and messages that were sent into the show. So we got a lot to do, we got a lot to talk about. But in order to accomplish any of that, I got to introduce you to my wonderful co-host for the episode this week. Jim Puliafka is with us here on the show. Hey, babe, how's it going?
It's going great. The holidays are bearing down on us, guys. I'm sure you all are feeling the same thing. It's a little kind of crazy, but I'm feeling really fortunate to be able to share this podcast time with you guys before these holidays bust loose on us. And we got special guests, so I'm happy about that too.
Ooh, yay, special guests. I love it. We're going to introduce them very shortly, but Jim, I agree. Definitely feeling thankful. I know Thanksgiving is kind of like the holiday of thankfulness, but I mean, it can count any time between November 1st and January 5th, right? I think. Holiday season. I think it works.
Yeah.
All right. Will Lindis is with us as well. Will, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm celebrating a 7th anniversary with the two of you. And so, what is that? This is the copper and wool anniversary. So, hope everyone has their copper and wool gifts ready, because I sure as fuck don't.
Well, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I do have one of those like copper tightly bound ring shower massagers that's coated in wool just for you. We'll bring it to South. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
You know what? It's what you've obviously seen my Amazon wish list. You knew that's exactly what I wanted. So, Brad, thank you.
You're welcome. I try. Well, man, 7 years. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk more about that. But, Will, welcome. Glad to have you here. We also have two special guests. Jim alluded to that fact just moments ago. And the first of these very fine gentlemen, you may remember from 150, 200 shows. I don't even remember at this point anymore. It was a ton. Unfortunately, we only get this gentleman back on very special occasions like this one. But Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast, is here with us on the show this week to help us celebrate. Chris, how the heck are you, my friend?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing great, Brad. Thanks for asking. Definitely time for thankfulness in this holiday season for everybody, whatever it is you're celebrating. However it is, just take some time for yourself and your family and the important things in your life. So some of the important things being friends. And I've known you guys for now longer than 7 years, so it's kind of crazy. Happy to be with you all today.
Happy to have you with us. Also, Chris, can I please request that you start doing a regular radio show where you give life advice and affirmation? Because that would be amazing.
That voice, yeah, absolutely.
You can do it in my ASMR voice or however you want to.
Whoa, careful what you say there, Chris. Well, welcome. So thrilled to have you back on the show with us this week. Our last special guest likes to get naked on the show as often as possible.
What?
And sometimes he induces us to follow along. He's our very own Magic Mike Lovins, and he has spawned his own amazing podcast, The Real Gay Movie Show. So, Mike, I understand you guys just finished recording your episode for this week and came right over here to our studio, quotes. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you here. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. How are you guys?
Better for having you here.
Yeah.
Aw. Well, it's always a pleasure to join you guys, and especially on special occasions like this, like Star Wars and an anniversary show. I mean, come on.
Oh, it's
Yeah, Mike, normally I'd feel bad about having you do like back-to-back podcasts about, like but knowing how much you love Star Wars, something tells me you could talk about it for like days on end. So
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an all-nighter, right?
I mean,
Oh yeah.
we budgeted
Probably.
8 hours in the agenda. That was enough, right?
Perfect.
Better get some snacks.
Yeah, this is going to be episode number 349, 350, 350, all the way through like 360. We're going to be able to dice this motherfucker up.
If Twitter and Facebook are any indication, you're probably
Oh,
right.
goodness. Definitely a lot to talk about with regards to Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of passionate discourse about the film, and I'm so looking forward to that. Also, want to give a big shout out. We got a bunch of folks joining us in the live chat. Welcome. Kevin Ryan is here. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. Hamstract. Well, he says copper and wool is otherwise known as electric sheep. So there you go.
That's perfect. We've got our Do Android Stream of Electric Sheep reference going, which is definitely fitting for a sci-fi themed show.
I was going to say, I think that fits in pretty well. And Sammy W is here.
Is that what androids dream of?
Oh, it is now.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, it is. Also, why aren't you on the pop culture train, Mike? Obviously, you got to fix that. Now that you don't have any more Star Wars movies to watch.
Right.
Yeah, now you can watch all 5 edits of Blade Runner or whatever it is, and the sequel to Blade Runner.
That's right.
I've seen.
Interesting. There's a fella in the live chat who has a similar last name to yours, Mike. His name is Peter. I don't know if you know this guy, but he says, I'm just here to make sure my husband, he must mean you, doesn't take all his clothes off, which is his reputation on this podcast. Peter, I don't want to get Mike in trouble, so I won't say much, but we are all at least shirtless on the show right now, though you can't see it, unfortunately.
Too late.
Now you're just teasing everybody.
No clothes apocalypse has begun. So if you want to follow along at home, please do, and take pictures. If you're over 18, send them to us. Anyway, guys, we got lots to talk about.
Brad, that's shameless, by the way.
I mean, it's not my birthday, so I can't request nudes yet. So I got to do what I can do, right?
Right.
I'm using the Force responsibly or not. Anyway. All right. So we're going to talk all about The Rise of Skywalker here in about 20 minutes or so. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay, and you're like, I don't care that it's your 7th anniversary and want to celebrate with listener comments and reminiscing, that's okay. We still love you. You can skip ahead using the time index in the show notes. But if you want to stick around for that discussion, we'd certainly love to have you. Gentlemen, 7 years. I cannot believe it has been 7 years of the Movie Bears podcast. Did you ever think that we would be around this long? Be honest.
Oh God! If we at the outset, if we were talking like episode 7, as opposed to episode 349 over 7 years, I would have thought that's a miracle. But I think it just speaks to sort of, whether or not we are on the same page with the movie or not, whether or not we're having a shitty week or just the best week ever or whatever. I think for me, at least, this is something that I love doing every single week. And I know that you all do, and all of our guests do as well. This is just such a fertile bed for conversation and just hanging out with some friends. So yeah, I'm glad that we're here, but never would have guessed it.
Yeah, and this is the place we come to talk, about movies with each other. Brad and I, obviously we live together, but I'll be honest and admit that sometimes we withhold our movie talk between each other just to have it on this episode with you, Will, and the mix of ideas that we get, that's what kind of drives the show for me anyway.
Well, I didn't know you 7 years ago, but I'm happy to have known you guys for as long as I have. I think the first episode, or at least the first anniversary that I've been around for, was when during the Force Awakens review.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, and what was that? Your 3rd anniversary? So and then
Wow.
5th anniversary was Last Jedi. So
Yep.
it's been great that I've been able to celebrate with you on more than one occasion. So this is great. I'm happy for you guys.
Looking forward to hear what you have to say about this latest one. And now that we kind of have a chance to see the finished product of this quote unquote trilogy, we will we'll get a chance to kind of remark on the whole thing. But Mike, it's been great having you as a repeat guest host. It's great seeing you be able to start your own podcast with your podcast partner. And I'm sorry, Ryan, is it his name?
Ryan. Yep.
Ryan. Yeah. We listen to that when we can. Our feeds are filled with podcasts, but I mean, we listen to the ones, especially on movies that I kind of am interested in what you guys have to say. So it's kind of great to see the community growing. Of LGBTQ. Help me out here, guys. LGBTQA plus. Is that yes? Movie podcasts. It's just one of the things we love to do, and it's great to see you guys flourishing doing that. You guys do some things that I would love to do. So, but I don't want to blatantly rip them off.
Yeah, 7 years is definitely a long time, and I'm honored that you guys asked me back to celebrate this anniversary. I was with you guys near the start, and I obviously did not last 7 years, much shorter than that. So my hat's off to you for lasting this long, and and it was a fun ride, and it's been great really getting to know you over these years. So good job, guys.
Aww.
Well, Chris, like you were part of our foursome for a bit. Like, we've been a trio for a long time, but we were also a foursome with you as part of it. And one of the things that I think I've taken away from this show so much as just like one of the absolute biggest positives is just, I don't think that I would necessarily know Mike and Chris and Brad and Jim. You and I, we know each other like before the show, but it was in a much like diminished capacity to what it is now.
Thanks, Growler.
Now, yeah, well, thanks, Growler. But I mean, now, like every year, Brad and Jim come to Austin and hang out with me and stay in our guest room and hang out with me and Scott and the puppers. And this like last year, I got a chance to meet up with Mike when we were in the same city together. And I got to visit Chicago and hang out with Chris and his partner when me and Scott were on a vacation there. And all of these connections and all of these trips and all of these like real life interconnections all stemmed from this show. And so when I say that it's like this fertile bed of like growth, it's not just like for us, like, as movie lovers, although it definitely is, but I do think that it's had a profound impact on the arc of our lives and our friendships.
Will, are you saying that the Movie Bears podcast surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us like the Force?
Definitely one of those.
On a good day.
Yeah, man, when you think about 7 years in your life, I mean, it's quite a stretch, right? It's depending on lifespans these days, and praise whatever that we're all still around, but it could be as much as like 10% at least. I did of our lives. That's crazy.
I did some quick math, and granted, our ages differ, but we've been doing the podcast for almost 19% of my life, which I had never thought about it that way before. That kind of astounds me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not insubstantial. Here's another interesting math piece. I made the little joke earlier before about like, I'm surprised we made it to 7 episodes, let alone 7 years. Can anyone guess what we reviewed on our 7th episode?
It wasn't I, Frankenstein, was it?
It was not I, Frankenstein.
Hansel and Gretel.
Although it was absolutely, Brad. It was Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters back in January of 2013. We reviewed that film as one of our main features, and as well as talking about some of the upcoming news for, oh my God, I think they're making a Star Wars Episode 7. What's going to happen with it? And so it's so fun to think back to like baby us, like at the beginning of this trilogy, just like what's coming ahead.
I've still never seen that Hansel and Gretel movie. Would you recommend it?
Nah.
Gotta listen to the episode.
Yeah, gotta listen to the episode, but
spoiler alert.
In brackets, you can pass.
No spoilers.
Oh goodness. Well, it's so awesome. Just thinking about all the wonderful moments on the show over the last 7 years, for me too. And Chris, you were such a huge part, and you continue to be. You were on our Steven Universe special a while back. We got to watch the part of the end of Game of Thrones with you and Jason and Mike. We got to hang out with you once upon a time. Always great to have you on the show. I think one of these years we all need to go to South by Southwest or Fantastic Fest.
Yeah.
I will totally do Fantastic Fest this year.
If you you do, I have a guest room. I've got a landing. I can fit a few bears in the house. And the Guy that normally stays with us for Fantastic Fest is taking an off year this year. So Simon's taking an off year. He's decided that traveling to and from Australia to the States every year is a lot, and so he's taking a gap year. So if anyone wants to come for either of those festivals, I got room.
He's going to find himself, I think is what it is. Well,
he's going on a walkabout.
Yeah. He's going to take a summer abroad this year, but he's already abroad compared to us. So anyway, whatever. Hey, we've
not
Hamstracked in the chat says, for what it's worth, Andrew Martin turned me on to you guys a little over a year ago and have been in love ever since. Happy anniversary. Hammy, thank you so much for that comment. I don't know if I know Andrew Martin. Do you know Andrew?
I know Andrew. So I know Hamstracked and Andrew Martin from the same film group that we're part of, and Andrew has a wonderful show there too. I guess I'll plug him too. Andrew watches movies, and we started talking about like, I'll plug yours, you plug mine. And we started building these conversations, and then other people like Hamstruck and other people from the community, Bruce, who's pops in here and there. Yeah, that all kind of came from those conversations as well. So I absolutely love that you're here each week with us, Hamstrack. It's one of my favorite things. You have such delightful insight that you share in the comments, and sometimes even like some information that like the three of us like, oh shit, we forgot about that. Like you're there to kind of like guide us in the right direction. So. And again, another one of the benefits of this show.
And he sometimes likes my terrible dad puns that nobody else likes. So that's very life-affirming, Hammy. Thank you.
And he's been in, lately he's been in joining us for almost every single live episode. I mean, it's incredible how much he's joined us. And it's I also noticed, Will, you said you knew Andrew Martin, which neither Brad nor I do. I think we've kind of, with the five of us in this podcast on in the Skype, I think we've kind of reached critical bear knowledge mass. Like you could mention almost anybody's name in the LGBT community, and one of us would probably know that person.
It's the 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or something.
Right.
Separation.
Oh.
Separation.
Oh.
That's going to be the Christopher Nolan movie after Tenet.
We also have a comment in the live chat from Kevin Ryan who says, hey guys, haven't seen the movie yet, so just popping in to congratulate you all on 7 years of podcasting. I haven't been listening for very long, but I truly love tuning in every week. And Kevin has been on like at least the last 10 shows or something. So Kevin, I think you're accruing some tenure here. I don't know if you can call yourself new anymore, but glad to have you with us and consistently tuning in. Always a pleasure.
If this were Twitch, like Kevin would have gotten like the little badge or the icon or whatever it is for like, I've logged a bunch of hours here. So Kevin, yeah, you're no longer a newbie. You're part of the crew.
Top fan.
Top fan. That's right. That's what it is. I should know this.
We should get little mushroom stamp badges, guys.
Value commenter.
Oh my god, that's terrible, and I
Here's
love
your
it.
mushroom stamp badge, Kevin. Enjoy. Welcome and thank you from being a new listener to now becoming a tenured one. We appreciate your support. Well, we have some other listener comments to share as well. Last week, we put out a post on social media just asking folks if they had anything they wanted to share with us for our 7-year anniversary. And we have some of those comments to share. And I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with our first comment coming from a now very long time friend of the show, Adrian Charlie from the Green Screen of Death podcast. Also a phenomenal show. If you love movie podcasts, definitely check those fellas out. They're awesome. But Adrian says, I love the chemistry between you three and love how it feels like we're hanging out each episode. I appreciate your viewpoints and love the way you value your listeners. My favorite MBP moment was meeting you in the South by Southwest Express line each morning. And that was several years ago at this point, which is crazy. Adrian says, Jim's smiley eyes catching mine every morning as if to say, welp, here we are again. By the way, what are you seeing today? Had some great little convos. He says, it's a time I will never forget. I love you all and look forward to listening to more episodes and look forward to the next time our paths cross. Adrian, absolutely co-signed on that sentiment about hoping we get together again soon, whether it's just with you and Bill from your show. Man, thank you so much for tuning in every year. And you have pretty smiley eyes yourself there, mister.
Right. And what's he trying to say about my smiley eyes here? I'm not sure. There must be a message hidden in there somewhere, other than the fact that I am a morning person. So I have no problem like smiling at people at 7:30 in the morning while standing in a line that's like a quarter mile long. But
which is helpful because Brad and I are not. Like, I don't know about in other contexts, but
No.
like we've been in those lines, and Brad's just kind of like, ugh. And I'm just like, well, let me look at this sheet and figure out what our movies are. And Jim's like, well, hello, person. I want to talk to you about your movies. And I'm glad that you did. Like, Adrian is now a lifelong like friend of our show. I mean, it's another one of those like weird connections. Like, he's stayed at my house, and that only happened because I'm on a show with Jim, and Jim struck up a conversation with him one random morning while we're standing in line. I love that so much.
Yeah. It's what I really enjoy about, we talk about the festival experience, obviously the movies and, seeing tons of movies and getting to, maybe even, talk to filmmakers and stuff like that. They're really awesome. But also meeting other people who are as much into film and movies as we are. And that year meeting Adrian and then seeing him at least 2 more times, I think, at the festival, beyond that 1 year. But Adrian's now popped into the chat. Hey, Adrian.
Oh, yeah.
He offered some clarification, Jim, about what he means by smiley eyes. He says, I'm trying to say Jim is handsome and cute as fuck and drew me in like a tractor beam. So there you go, babe.
Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate it.
We're glad Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The feeling is mutual.
We're glad Obi-Wan Kenobi did not disable the tractor beam before it pulled you guys together and we met as a result, because we love you, Adrian.
At least I didn't do a holdo maneuver on him.
Wow. All right.
We're here.
So
that one's
saying
on the table.
You can tear them open.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So
on that note,
here's that comment, and it's in the mind box. It's wait, hold up, and it's locked. There we go.
Stay on target. All right, Jim, I think you have a comment to share with us. Awkward segue.
I do. We have another listener. We have listeners everywhere, right? This one's from the UK. His name is Martin Sudlow McKay. Some of you guys may know him from Facebook, and we're friends on Facebook. He says, I found this podcast purely by accident, but I just love that being a huge nerd, I have somewhere to belong, to listen to others talk about the things they also love and get involved. Much love, guys, and big bear hugs. So, yeah, Martin is a friend on Facebook, and we sometimes will exchange comments and stuff on movies that we've seen. So thank you, Martin, for dropping us a comment on the show and the special episode. It really means a lot to every single person that we hear from.
Yeah, he's a very wonderful fan. I think that different people connect with us in very different ways. And Martin is always the one who, when we post something on our Facebook page, he's usually the first to have some sort of like, oh, I really like this movie, or I can't wait to go see it this weekend. He's very dialed into those conversations. And I love that because sometimes you never know when you're posting something on Facebook if it's going to go out into the void or if people are reading it or what. But like, Martin's there. So thank you, Martin.
He's like that voice from Frozen 2. Whenever we make a post, like he calls her
Aurora.
Yeah, he makes a good point about just nerd spaces in general. I mean, we're all here to talk about Star Wars, right? And it's like that's something that really didn't exist, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's really come into its own. So I think that's really cool that everyone's just kind of like able to get excited about their own little things or get really excited about everything, however that applies to you. So welcome, Martin. I don't know you, but you seem pretty cool. So happy to nerd out.
You guys,
you get the Chris Lopez stamp of approval.
You guys should totally connect on Facebook. Martin's amazing, Chris, and you're amazing. It would be an amazing discourse. I'm just saying. Not to pressure you into friend requesting people that you don't know. That's weird. I would never do that, but I'm just saying.
I have like 5 million people in Facebook limbo. Yeah, I'm bad about that.
Brad is shipping the Chris Martin connection. Right now.
Oh, Chris Martin, like dude from Coldplay. There you go.
Yes.
All right. Well, Martin, thank you so much for your support of the show. Will, who did you have a comment from?
Hey, so I've got a comment here from Noah Eckert, who's from Tennessee. And Noah writes, hey, brand new listener. It's awesome to hear about the movies. I love in a whole new light. Happy anniversary, and here's to more. And I think that what's kind of exciting about this comment for me is it's fun to realize that, like Noah, like Kevin, that even 7 years in, new people are finding us and coming across us. And, there was a point like very early on where I was like, if it's just us and like the same 3 listeners each week, I'm okay with that because the show is us just having a good time talking together. But the fact that we're getting all of these new pieces in like our chemistry is just so invigorating. So thank you, Noah.
We appreciate it. For sure. Welcome and glad to have you on board. Mike, how about you?
So there's a message here from Randy Wyatt from New York. And Randy says, being both hot and insightful is unfair, dudes. Fair, period.
Aw.
That's a pretty nice comment, I'd say.
Chris, any insights on that comment?
Oh, yeah. Randy makes his living by being insightful, and he's also hot. So I guess we live in this unfair world.
Yeah.
But, at least we have good company, right? Mm-hmm. Randy's actually my sometimes collaborator when I do comics projects. But yeah, my most recent graphic novel was written by him. So I know Randy pretty well.
Oh, awesome. So we're branching out into friends of friends in other mediums, which is even more awesome, I think.
I need to make some more friends that make movies, and then it'll be like full circle.
Yeah.
Another great thing about Randy, just like, so I've got one of those beards that just sort of like, it never gets actual volume. It just sort of like curls up against my neck. So like I have like a hard limit on how much beard I can have. Randy has one of those beards that I am 1,000% envious of. Like, he just like, he rocks just like the full on beard. And so, and I wish I could too.
Hashtag beard envy.
Beard envy.
Yeah. Yeah. My beard right now is actually the floofiest it's been in quite a while.
I like it. I love it.
Thank you.
For you want some more of it.
Sorry for you folks listening that can't quite see it. I apologize. We're working on that. Maybe this year. Who knows?
Fingers crossed.
New Year's resolution.
Well, Randy is, I agree with you guys, definitely a big time sweetheart and mega hot. I got to meet Randy about a year and a half ago at this point, I think, for the first time. And man, had so much fun hanging out with that guy. Chris, I could see why you say he's so insightful and enjoy spending time collaborating with him, because that guy is, what is it they say in Boston, Jim? Wicked smart?
Wicked smart.
Well, thank you, Randy. All right, Chris, have you got a comment for us?
Let me pull one out of the bag here. Got one from Dig Space from Arizona. I worked on talk radio for 6 years in Amsterdam. All of you are very good at expressing yourselves, and I like your critiques. So I have to agree with that. I think the power trio that we have here of Jim, Brad, and Will, they all have their own sort of unique angles on their show, and it's like you've got kind of a feeling of what each one's going to say about a movie after you've seen it and you listen to them, but they often surprise you with like new things, and they play off each other really well. So I definitely echo your comments, Dig.
And I'll say any compliment that you give us, Dig, for kind of like how we sound, I have to pass back along to Jim, who does a wonderful job of editing our show each week and making us sound presentable.
Aw. Well, to be honest, for a show that's recorded, like a lot of, I don't want to get too deep into the podcast stuff, but we know Dig Space. He's a really sweet member of the bear community here in Tucson. Very talented visual artist as well. Love some of his stuff. We met him through the bear group here in Tucson. But yeah, I mean, we record the show in different. We're separated, right? We're not in the same location, so sometimes the conversation is difficult. You know, it's way different than having 3 people in a room talking about something. But I think over 7 years we've kind of gotten it down to the point where I don't have to do a lot of editing to make it sound more natural than it normally would. You know, in a situation like that. So, thanks, Will. Appreciate that.
And Dig, yeah, thank you so much for writing into the show, especially having worked in radio for 6 years in Amsterdam, of all places. That's quite the compliment to hear you think we sound well. This is just something that we do for fun, but definitely really glad that you enjoy it so much. Thank you. We've got another comment here. This one's a fun one. This is from Lynn in Michigan, who I went to college with. And Lynn and I are friends, and every once in a while, she'll comment on something, like bear related that I haven't restricted to my Bears Only group because it wasn't like risque enough that I thought I need to do that. Anyway, she wrote in, and I was very surprised. So Lynn, thank you for the message. She says, until Brad posted about this show on Insta, I had no clue what a bear was outside of National Geographic. Tune into the show on a lark, and I got my answer. She says, pretty sure my husband would qualify as a bear, ? He's 280, but built like a buff Pillsbury doughboy with chest hair you can braid. So
I love this girl.
You had me at buff Pillsbury doughboy.
She says, anyway, congrats on 7 years and keep up these awesome reviews. Even us straight girls like them. So, Lynn, thanks so much for writing in. Guys, I don't know Lynn's husband, but now I feel like I have to go stalk her Facebook and find a picture. But, Lynn, it sounds like he would definitely qualify from my point of view anyway.
Yeah, don't be trying to angle for special pictures.
I'm not. I said I'd stalk her Facebook, not solicit, unsavory pictures.
I'm reading between the lines.
But just collectively, it sounds like, at least from the description, we're going to give her the, what did you call it before, the mushroom stamp of approval, Brad? That's terrible.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so there's a straight girl that I work with that listens to our show, and sometimes we get pretty graphic, and I'm like, she listens to this. Thank God she doesn't mention some of the things that she's heard us say, but I'm like, wow. So straight girls like their gay movie pundits, I guess.
Every so often, my boss, who's a straight woman, will listen to the episode too. And there's like a half the time I'm just like, oh no. But also half of it's just like, I'm glad that we have this show that is, I mean, obviously we're like a niche program, right? Like we are very keyed into our demographic. That's our point of view, and that's what we bring to the table. But I'd like to think that at least what we're able to put out there is accessible enough that other people from different walks of life can also like tune in and enjoy the show. So that's awesome.
Just please forgive us some butt sex jokes now and then.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to dive into our demographic, right?
Straights have butt sex too.
Oh.
Don't fool yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, and I haven't been on Growler in like a year. Am I still a bear technically? I don't even know.
You are.
You know
You
what?
are the
You are
bear.
on camera
Are you
right
kidding?
now, and we're gonna say yes.
I don't know. Wolf and Gurr, I mean, I don't know. What are you?
Oh goodness. Well, thank you so much for writing in. Jim, have you got another comment from the bag for us?
Yeah, I do. From Aaron Charles in Ohio. I don't think I know the name off the top.
Hey, Ohio.
Hi, Ohio. Oh, that's right. Mike is from Ohio, right? I think you guys are. Yeah. He says, I'm pretty picky about my podcasts. I love listening to them, but I just don't have as much time for it as a lot of other people do. And boy, do I hear that. Hence having to be picky, I guess. But MBP is like must-see TV, and I never miss a week if I can help it. Thank you for 7 great years of morning commutes. Wow, that's pretty awesome. And man, I totally thank you, Aaron, first of all, for the comment. I hope you keep listening, and I hope you keep, maybe interacting with the show sometime. I know it's probably hard to do while you're driving to work, but maybe some night you can catch one of the live shows. I hear you. I listen to podcasts on my morning commute as well to work. Usually not ours because I edit the show, so I don't have to listen to it on my commute. But there's so many great podcasts out there. We're in a sea of, fantastic podcast content. So I tend to jump around too, and I wish I could give more attention to some of the ones I really like. But like I said, there's just so much out there. So we appreciate you putting us in your rotation for however much you can. It really does mean a lot.
Absolutely agree. There's so many podcasts out there. So, Aaron, it means a ton that we, I guess, hold a consistent place in your rotation. So whatever we're doing that's making that happen for you, I'm very happy to hear that. So thanks for supporting the show. All right.
What if you guys talked like twice as fast and then he could fit like another podcast into his commute?
It's interesting. I did hear from a friend recently who
Yes.
listens to our show at 1.5 speed for exactly that reason. And he was like, it's not that you guys are long-winded. He's like, I just, have 45 minutes to listen, not an hour and 15 minutes. And so also apparently
I'm guilty of that myself. Like there's some podcasts that I listen to where I do the exact same thing for the exact same reasons. Like,
I keep forgetting that that's an option.
Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. I imagine it might take a little getting used to. I don't know how easy it is. Maybe we should put some like really slowly worded content in here. So when he plays it at 1.5 times, like it'll come out as a message.
or we could just absolutely mess with the whole system and just do our next review talking like the Micro Machine Man. Like just going like super fast. He's like, what the fuck is going on? Oh.
Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is a movie that everybody's been anticipating for the last couple. Yeah, that would. Yeah, that could work. I could see that. I like it. All right, we got one last comment here. Will, I believe you've got that one handy.
Absolutely. So this comment comes from Mixon Kelly from Australia, actually,
Whoa.
who says, sometimes we don't get certain movies for a year or more after you do, but I still listen to the spoiler-free sections of the show for each movie. Once I see the movie, I then try to go back and listen to the spoiler parts I had to skip. This might be why super old episodes keep getting listens. They're from me. Happy B-Day, mates.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think that's part of, like, when we were coming up with sort of like the format of this show, the biggest question was, are we going to do spoilers or are we not, or how are we going to handle that? And we've sort of settled on this sort of happy medium type scenario where we talk about it spoiler free first and then we go into spoiler town. And for people like you, Mixon, like, that is exactly the right, like, outcome, I would think. You know, someone can, if they've already seen the movie, just listen all the way through. If not, they can listen to the parts, check out the show notes that Jim timestamps for us, and then come back later to check out the spoiler section. So I'm glad that's working out so well for you.
Definitely.
And I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to put those those time tags in there so people can jump around the spoiler content. Where with all the information that's out there about movies these days, it's hard sometimes not to get spoiled on movies, right? We there's always something popping up unintentionally in our feed, whether somebody intends to spoil something or maybe they don't even think it's a spoiler, but it can happen. We try to keep it as spoiler free as we can in our non-spoiler section. So I appreciate that somebody recognizes that. That's awesome.
All right. I completely agree, and I think, I would have a hard time living somewhere where popular movies take more than a year to come out compared to everywhere else. I guess that's something with distribution. I don't know, but can you imagine having to wait a year to see a movie? Like, that would be insane.
It can go all different ways too, because every country gets distribution, like has their own local distribution. So I know Australia specifically, just from Simon, they got like Parasite like 6 months before we did. But then some of the things that are on Simon's best of 2019 list are things that we saw at the beginning of 2018. So it's kind of a weird, like, summer forward, summer backwards type thing.
Yeah, even like TV, like Disney Plus, I think there are places in Europe or whatever that aren't going to get Mandalorian until March or May or something like that. So people are like desperately trying to avoid spoilers of the show, and it's like, how can they
Possibly,
not have seen Baby Yoda by now? You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, unfortunately,
obviously is a spoiler. They're
Facebook friends with people in the States. Like, my friend Thomas lives in Germany, and he's like, well, I already know all about Baby Yoda, even though I don't get Disney Plus for another 4 months.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a bummer, right? I mean, because, when that hit on the show, for us that are lucky enough to see the show, it was a oh my god moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was, and unfortunately, and it's sad that some people are going to, end up being kind of miss out on that feeling. So
yeah, I didn't start watching it until last week, so all of that was spoiled for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
And that's pretty much the only significant thing that's happened on the show. So,
Yep.
So that's it. You missed that. You miss it all. Oh, never mind. We're not reviewing.
We are not reviewing The Mandalorian. Speaking of oh my god,
that's a different episode.
Speaking of oh my god moments, though, Mike Levins keeps like leaning back in his chair and like stretching his arms like out over.
Oh,
now Jim's doing it. So hot.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're instigating, and I love every minute of it. It's wonderful.
You're loving every minute of it.
Although I do have to say, Chris joined the podcast first, and he was shirtless first with his beautiful,
his
awesome Santa hat. And I love that your mic cover, Chris, is red, even though listeners can't see it. It's very festive with the Christmas lights behind you. You could totally like put Vaseline on the lens of your camera and like take a cool selfie, and it would fit in really well on Insta.
Is that a euphemism? Put Vaseline on the lens of your camera?
Today is the day you start your journey towards being an influencer.
There we go.
Oh,
I have much to learn from the masters.
Oh gosh, Chris Lopez, you've been an influencer in my life for many years already. So, Well, listeners, thank you so much, everybody who wrote into the show. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to read all of the comments, but whether you submitted them through Facebook, Twitter, our email address, reaching out personally, thank you so much. We love you. Thank you for your support of the show. Continuing to listen. Guys, I don't know if we'll be around in another 700 years. Or even just, the next 7 years, but whatever that will be. I know that
Do you mean humanity or just us?
Why not both? Why not both?
Yes.
But
Humanity will not be around.
I love the fact that at least as long as YouTube is free, all of our shows and these moments live on in perpetuity until that maybe goes away. Who knows? Maybe 20 years from now, we'll be looking back, at a video feed of ourselves much, much younger and feel regretful that we didn't.
I can just now. I'm envisioning that young bear, think like somebody around Kevin Ryan's age or even younger. Like when we're all gone, all five of us, we're all gone and to wherever we go. And he's like, in his later years, he's like, God, I remember some friends and they had a podcast. I wonder if trying to find us on the internet, right? Looking for what was the name of that podcast?
What I hope
had a bunch of bears.
What I hope happens is, 20, 30, 40, whatever number of years that is, and we're retired and we're done and we're no longer podcasting. Then they're going to reboot us with Movie Bears Podcast, The Next Generation, or Movie Bears Podcast, The College Years, or whatever you want to call it. But sort of like skewed towards like the youth viewership. I could totally see that as the long-term goal.
Actually, I think the way it's going to work, Jim, like 50 years from now, a young, newly turned 18, person is going to like walk out of this like house that he lives in. It's nighttime. There are stars above. He looks down at a ring on his hand that has a bear paw, and then he holds his hand out and his laptop flies into it, playing a recording of the show. Wait, no, that's The Last Jedi. Damn it, that's already been
Personally, I would love that.
Kevin and Peter in the chat say that's total ageism. On you, Jim, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you so much, listeners, for helping us to celebrate 7 years of our show. It's a little uncomfortable to pat ourselves on the back. It's not something we like doing. So we appreciate hearing your thoughts and comments. We just do this for fun. We don't charge for the show. We pay out of our own pockets to make the show happen just because we like hanging out and talking. And Mike and Chris, so glad to have you with us this week to help us celebrate. But believe it or not, 40 minutes into the show, we still have a motherfucking movie to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Are we ready to put
Star Wars?
Oh, goodness.
All of the Star Wars.
All right. Well, are we ready to make the jump into our spoiler-free discussion of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker before we give folks fair spoiler warning?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's skip on ahead.
Let's catch up to this thing through what is it called? Light speed.
Prepare for light speed.
Yeah, and let's also get that good SEO juice with that Star Wars review.
All right, then. Here is just the spoiler plate warning, as we like to call it. We're going to be talking about Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, spoiler-free, for probably, 15 minutes or so. Then we'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and, you're just looking for external perspective, we'll be happy to share that with you. But as always, as much as we like talking about movies spoiler-free, I think it's a good idea to see a movie and form your own opinion. So, if you like what we have to say, that's awesome. But please also see movies and figure out, what you think. Mm-hmm. Did I just tell people not to listen to the show after 7 years? Whoops.
No,
I didn't mean to.
I don't know.
No, you told them not to listen to the spoiler section.
Tell them to go see movies and form their own opinions, which nobody on social media does. So, I think you're encouraging them to do something groundbreaking.
Okay.
Look, there's so many movies that come out every year, whether it be direct release on Netflix, Hulu, whatever, or in theaters, massive, limited release, whatever. I think all of us here can agree that like anything that puts more butts in those seats watching those movies is a good thing.
Helps us all.
Even if
Right? As movie fans.
even if it's Hansel and Gretel witch hunters, right?
Even it, Brad. Oh gosh, you started a journey just there that I don't know if I can join you on.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Mike, that was adorable. I feel bad that listeners aren't able to see us right now. But I did take a screenshot of you holding up your porg. Because it was adorable. Maybe
You don't even get the warning like in Snapchat that someone's taking a screenshot.
Right? I feel violated.
That's right.
Well, I know that consent is
I'm
sexy.
kidding. You can take all the screenshots of me.
Well, that's what you said last time you were on the show, so I was just carrying that through. But consent is not forever; it can be revoked at any time. So just let us know. If.
This is the safe, sane, and consensual section of the show.
Fuck yes, absolutely. All right, guys, it is that time to say hello to Bobby Miller. Hey, Bobby Miller, welcome. He says happy 7 years, guys. Bobby is another one who has been listening to the show forever. He's been around a really long time. Bobby, really glad to have you with us so often. Thanks for tuning in. You're just in time for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. All right, so, I think most people know what the fuck is going on with Star Wars these days, but if you wouldn't mind just giving us some very brief setup about this film, and then spoiler-free, of course, your initial thoughts. Was this worth seeing in theaters, waiting for rental, skipping entirely? What'd you think?
Okay, so the movie is called Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. It's the 9th episode of the Star Wars saga. It's the 3rd episode of the current trilogy, and the description is you've got the Resistance that survived the last movie, and they're still facing off against the First Order as they do things that are Star Wars-y, because once we get further, then we start to get into spoilers. And that's all you need to know, because it's Star Wars. Fuck it. You guys know what we're in for, right? So we don't need to go too deep into it. Just know that this is the finale. This is the closing segment. This is the end of the saga, the end of this story. And I think that it's remarkably hard to discuss this movie without discussing just all of the weight that comes along with it, whether it be just all of the shit that's happened the last 2 years on social media, which has been just the worst, whether it be how you incorporate your love of the saga as a whole, or the current trilogy, or what you feel about the prequels. All of these things inform and shape our opinions, and I want to say all of that up front, because I have a feeling I'm going to be the most negative person on the show about this movie, and I'm okay with that. I also don't want to yuck anyone else's yum, because I know this is super important for everyone. So I think this movie here has a lot of structural problems that kind of come from the fact that J.J. Abrams is really good at certain things, and he's not great at certain other things. He is a plot guy. He's really good at the things that you inject into the story, like thing happens, then another thing happens, another thing happens. In my experience, I don't think he's as good of a story guy. In other words, how those plot points smooth out into the overall narrative. He's very good at memorable moments with characters. Someone shows up on screen and gives you that fuck yeah moment, or the nostalgic feels, or just makes you feel like, yeah, this is my Star Wars. But to me also, he's not as good at kind of turning those moments into character arcs. So I struggle a little bit on how to rate this movie, because the things that JJ is not really good at normally, he's not really good at here for me. I think the story of this movie has a lot of problems. There's a lot of this movie's kind of a mess to me. And from a character arc perspective, I think most characters are fairly stagnant to me and don't really get a lot to do in terms of overall growth, except for one who he treats extraordinarily well, and we'll talk about in spoilers. But I did get those cool fuck yeah moments that are Star Wars related. And so ultimately, I think, should you go see this movie? Sure. I think you should, because it's the end of the saga. It's the end of this trilogy. It's this end of this journey that began back in, what, 77? Like, this thing has been going for quite a while, and I think you would do yourself a disservice to not see it, because you've read someone say that I love it, or because you read someone say that I hate it online, whatever. But I also think that from my perspective, like, it's hard for me to overlook those negative elements. And so when I turn off my brain, when I don't think about those, like, kind of those structural elements that are so important to me, I ultimately find some things that I enjoyed about this movie. But when I think very hard about it, those things start to erode. And what that does for me ultimately is it means, like, look, this is probably the one that I'm not going to revisit as often. Like, I don't think that I'm going to pop this one in the DVR. I'm not going to, like, pop, or the Blu-ray player. I'm not going to, like, just, like, run and play this movie very often. For me, the trilogy probably ended in 2017. But I do think that there's some things to take away from this that are very positive. I think Kylo Ren has the best arc of this movie. Like, the character of Kylo Ren has a lot of love given to him, and I love that J.J. Abrams kind of got that character, even if I don't know that he kind of got the others. So, mixed bag. Ultimately, you're going to go see it anyway. You've probably already seen it, but for me, it's just like, I have to put the little asterisk next to it. Like, I liked it kind of despite its flaws, not because of its strengths.
Very good.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Well, I think Star Wars as a whole just has a ton of momentum behind it. And so going into the theater, I had already seen people's reaction posts of either virulently hating the movie or absolutely adoring it. So I didn't know where to fall. I didn't really have any expectations going in. I was just like, you know what? I'm in for a fun ride. Hit me. And kind of sat through it. Just with a pretty big smile on my face as, you know, you hit those fuck yeah moments like you called. And I was like, you know, this is actually pretty good. And then right after that, there would be like a sort of Star Wars puzzle piece that I think like J.J. Abrams felt like he needed to stick in and have this kind of scene or this kind of interaction with characters. I'm like, oh, right, this is a Star Wars movie and they're going to do Star Wars stuff. And I rolled my eyes a little bit, but like I said, it had enough momentum to really keep me going. And in spite of that, I really liked the movie. I haven't really sort of picked it all apart in my brain yet. I know there are holes. I know there's definitely weak spots. But I don't know if I really want to go there. Again, it's kind of like this tweet that I read the other day. That's like, it surprises me how many thousands of people rediscover that Star Wars is just okay sometimes. And I'm just like, yeah, you know what? That can be totally true too. And it can still be fun. So yeah, I liked it. And I think what it did really well is I think it did the ensemble thing really well. I think the characters all kind of had like some sort of shining moment. And I think that was handled well. And even introducing even more characters and stuff into this, you know, last and final chapter. And I thought that was kind of all rolled in. So yeah.
All right.
Very good.
So we've got sort of a mixed bag recommend from Will. Chris, it sounds like this is definitely a recommend for you. Is that accurate?
I mean, if you've seen all the other Star Wars movies, might as well, right?
I like the way you think.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Jim, how about for you? Where did you land on this one?
I really like this movie, and I do recognize that not all of it worked. Will, you hit it on the head. I think this one is kind of the capper, right, for the saga, not just for this trilogy, but for the entire saga, supposedly, right? So the filmmaker had to stuff, I feel like they felt they had to stuff a lot into this movie, both plot-wise, character-wise, fan service-wise. It kind of all got stuffed in here, and at moments it did feel very messy to me, and a little bit unfocused. And I wish it could have been better on that category, but I still enjoyed the hell out of a lot of this movie. There were moments like Chris, like you said, where I was like, please, please don't go there. Please don't go there. Oh, they're going there. And I roll my eyes. And then, but like 5 minutes later, they're into something that's like completely wowing me. Like, and I think that's okay. I think I had that kind of response to every single one of the last three movies. There were things in each of the three movies, the Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and this one, that I'm like, yeah, that's fucking awesome that they're doing that. And I want to see more of that. And then there were things like, oh my God, that was not so great. I mean, that did not land with me. So I kind of see these all kind of in the same thing. I'm not a ranker. I don't like to take my Star Wars movies and do a fucking 1 to 9, or is it 1 to 11 now? Whatever ranking of the movies. I see that a lot, but I'm like, oh God, I can't wrap my head around that. These last three movies, I thought, brought the saga home very well, very entertainingly. I like them all. I like this movie. I'd recommend it. Go see it on the big screen. I mean, it is possible, and all the noise we're seeing is because I think it's possible to love something too much and get attached to something too much. And then, when your expectations aren't met in a certain way, you're like off the deep end, and I've seen that a lot on social media and stuff. So just chill out, go see it, have a good time, appreciate it for what it does well, recognize what you don't think it does so well, but look at it kind of in the whole. And I think it does. It's a Star War. It gives us a Star War, and I think it does it fine. So I liked it.
Jim says, Jim's movie quote poster would be,
it's a Star War.
No. Yours would be, look at it in the hole.
It.
That's right. Look at it in the hole.
So one of the things that I did like about this version of it is that, yeah, there were eye-rolling moments, but they didn't seem to drag as much as they did in the previous movies. So they were at least over quicker and on to another amazing set piece or a really cool moment.
Yeah. Nothing in this movie dragged. It was boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
boom, boom.
Yeah, and because of that, I think it felt a little. That's where the messiness comes from for me a little bit.
I think that's fair to say, yeah. Mike, how about for you? Is any of that resonating with your thoughts, or where do you come down?
Everybody has had some good points. I fucking loved this movie. I did, unapologetically. I am not going to say that it was a perfect film. I definitely recognize that there are some flaws. But some of my thoughts on there, you gotta wait for spoilers, I guess. But it's hard to dig into this movie and say either what you really like or don't like without getting into specific spoilers. But what I will say is, this movie is much better than the initial critic responses will lead you to believe. Which is another good reason to see it and make up your own mind. But I've only seen it twice, so I haven't made up my full mind yet. But I love it.
I love how you're like, well, I've only seen it twice. We've only seen it once so far. I really want to see it again.
Yeah,
Mike,
we will be seeing it again. I guarantee.
Mike, I know we aren't at spoilers yet, and that line can be a little hard to walk, but would you say your second viewing was as good as the first? Less so?
Here's the thing. I will say that I think my second viewing was actually even better. And the reason is because there are some moments in this movie where you're either like, oh, wow, I can't believe they did that, or wow, I can't believe they did that. But when you're seeing it for the second time and all of that then isn't a surprise, you can kind of take the movie more as just a one full entertaining package, and when you're not wondering what's coming up next, you can just kind of be in the moment and appreciate it more.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. It makes me think back to when I saw The Last Jedi the first time. I had all these like hopes and wants and little boy dreams and wishes that got dashed, and that's fine. That's fair. Rian Johnson's his own filmmaker. But walking out of that movie, I was just like, oh my fucking God, I hate that movie so much. I didn't like anything about it. But then we saw it a second time, and I think you're right, Mike, because I was able to kind of get a lot of that baggage like out of the way at that point. I'd already gone through my initial stages of grief. I could more appreciate that movie for what it was. I still fucking hate it, but there are some things that I really do like about that film. And a lot of those things really centered around Kylo Ren and Rey's relationship. And I was glad to see that major through line, that throughput continues, of course, into this final chapter of the new trilogy. But interesting to see some things that J.J. Abrams did. I don't know if it's course correcting or he just had ideas when he did the first movie and wanted to see those things implemented. I don't know. We'll talk more in spoilers, but there were some decisions that were made that made me feel a lot better about some things that had or had not happened so far in that new trilogy. So I'm kind of anxious to talk about those things and see what you guys think. But it's interesting, like sitting back and watching some of the social media discussions that are happening, because when Last Jedi came out, it was like the light and the dark side of the Force or something. Like it was divided, right? You either hated the movie or you really loved the movie. And it's interesting because all the people who after The Last Jedi were like, oh my God, this is the best Star Wars movie ever. It's so great and wonderful. Subverted my expectations and did things I didn't expect. Now those same people are like, oh my God, J.J. Abrams didn't do what I expected him to do with this movie, and it didn't do all the things that I wanted to see in this movie, and it's a terrible movie. And so I'm kind of like, wait a second, you were the guys that were making fun
of us
for being disappointed, and now like you're feeling that, and it's okay. It's just a little weird to me.
Well, I think there's more to it than that, though. Like, because I think that it's not just a matter of that. I think that there's a large segment. Like, I come from the group that, like, I just did my top 25 of the decade, and, like, spoiler alert, like, The Last Jedi was on it because it's my favorite of the Star Wars saga, and it's like it and Mad Max are like the two best franchise films of the 2010s, for me at least, right? And the last 2 years, like, I've put up with a lot of shit, just like, just bringing it up, just like, you can't talk about this movie without someone like popping into it and saying like, oh, I fucking hated that movie. And which is hard for me kind of coming into this one, which is one that I didn't like as much. And I'm like trying my best not to like hate it. You didn't rain on. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. But I'm definitely trying not to like rain on everyone's parade, but I get it because there's a large segment of us who for the last 2 years have been like, kind of been shit on for liking a thing, and now that we don't like a thing, like I think there are some people who are kind of like, I guess, being less diplomatic about their responses back. I'm trying to be very diplomatic with mine myself. But I get it.
But that's the thing, though, because now it's the reverse. Like, those of us who hated The Last Jedi took so much shit, not necessarily from you, Will, but took so much shit from people who are like, ooh, I'm a very smart movie critic. Look how great I am. The Last Jedi is amazing artwork, and you're so dumb for not liking it. And now those people...
But that's not fair.
I'm telling you legitimately, people in my own life, that is how they acted. Yeah. And now that we're like, oh my God, we love this movie. This was so great. This is what we were waiting for this whole time. Now they're acting, counter to, how they had carried themselves before. So I don't know. I wish that there was a nice, gray, happy area where we could all talk about Star Wars. Maybe like on this show, we'll see. What we liked, what we didn't like, without it having to be like a value judgment about the other person. You know what I mean? Like,
I think. Go ahead. Good. Finish that thought.
Well, I was just going to say, Jim, you were watching a review the other day, and I forget the hot nerd's name that you were watching, but he said it's not fun to talk about Star Wars anymore because of how divisive the films and the fan base have become. I don't know that I completely agree with that because I'm enjoying talking about Star Wars with you guys already. But, Will, I definitely just wanted to acknowledge your point. I mean, I think it's perfectly fair to say people who like Last Jedi took some shit too. But it's now, kind of flipped. And so the internet is losing its mind.
And I think we all, when these reviews came out before most of us had a chance to see it, I think a lot of us, and then we saw it, I think we tend to kind of measure our own responses against other people on, especially on now we can do it real time, right, through Twitter and stuff. We measure our own responses against other people who we might consider to be more knowledgeable. We might consider, whatever, and that's where the friction comes in, because we're looking at somebody who's crapping all over the movie basically on Twitter, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I like this movie, and that kind of hurts me a little bit, right? To feel that way, and that's just the thing about film criticism. I never get caught up in it. These critics are just people like you, me, Chris, Mike, and Will. They're not necessarily like the be all end all judge of a movie's quality. Everybody has their likes and dislikes and how these movies fit in. We all have our preferences for how movies go. So I try not to get too upset about that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. So the problem is that sometimes I think people are saying just what is going to get them clicks. It's like they're trying to be that divisive voice or that, because they know that it's going to get them clicks and it's going to start some shit and stuff like that. And that's just unfortunate.
All right.
I think the other thing to kind of put into the mix too is I think that it's going to depend a lot on the longevity of the conversation. I think what was most frustrating for me personally about the Last Jedi discourse, which, trust me, the word discourse is like a 4-letter word in my house. Like, it is the most obnoxious thing. Brad, you mentioned
we'll call it intercourse.
Well, whatever. Yeah, that's way better. Brad, you mentioned like some people are getting exhausted. Like, I'm someone who, like, I love Star Wars. Like, it's my life, like my boyfriend's got Star Wars, like multiple Star Wars tattoos. Like, I would get one if I didn't, focus on other nerdy adventures instead. But I've not wanted to really talk about Star Wars with people for the last year because I know that I can't bring up I love this thing without it becoming discourse. And so I think it's going to depend a lot on the rise of the Rise of Skywalker conversations, because I think within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of a major blockbuster coming out, like, I think the takes are going to be fire hot, and that's fine, because that kind of happens with every movie, probably exaggerated a bit with like Avengers Endgame or Rise of Skywalker or whatever like the big hot ticket is going to be. But if we're still talking about the Rise of Skywalker in 2 years, just like, I'm going to jump off a fucking bridge. Like, cause I don't want to have, again, not like in terms of like, oh, I like this thing, but just like if the discourse is still happening, then I just can't. It's been 2 years of hell. And I certainly hope that no one else has to like experience that as well.
Well, I think you're going to have to get used to it if there's going to be a Disney movie every year in the Star Wars universe, if not a named, or a numbered version in the main story. So I think as fans, we kind of need to get to a point where we can talk about it and say, hey, this is fun. I like this, and kind of drop it at that and not kind of read into it a lot of stuff of your hopes and dreams and, 40 years of desire for this property kind of manifesting in a different way than you'd hoped.
Well, Chris, the good thing is I think that Disney has said that they're going to stall more movies and focus on what they've got coming down the pike on Disney Plus. And if we can get quality content on there and maybe look forward to another Star Wars movie in 2 or 3 years, maybe that's, I think that we've just been thrown so much Star Wars in these short amount of time here. I think it'd be good for them to take a break.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
I absolutely loved The Rise of Skywalker, and I can't wait to get into spoilers and talk about it with you folks. But I agree. I think I'm ready for the movies to be done, at least for the next 5 years, if not more. I don't know that I have more of them in me right now. I also, I just hope, and Will, to your point, some of the shit that you've gone through in your conversations, I would just hope for more civility. You know what I mean? I have seen fans of this movie like shitting all over people who, love The Last Jedi. I see people who love The Last Jedi shitting all over people who love this movie. And it's just unfortunate that we can't talk about things, you know what I mean, without it being like a you're dumb or you're an elitist fuck or, you know, whatever. Like, let's just talk about Star Wars. Like, what?
Take it out of Star Wars, though. Take it away from Star Wars. This is what you get when you go on social media, and if you talk about any topic at all, almost. I mean, it's like we go to extremes right away.
Yeah.
Like there's no middle. There's a very slim middle ground to talk civilly about any topic, be it politics or you name it. Right? It seems to go slam one side or the other, and then it becomes adversarial, basically.
Well, especially with, like, I think the worst manifestation of it for me was with what happened with Kelly Marie Tran after The Last Jedi. There were a lot of very entitled fans who were pissed off that they dared to have a female supporting character, let alone one who is a minority, in their precious Star Wars movie, and she received just a unconscionable amount of negative social media feedback that was, I mean, so deep in the harassment thing that she had to bail on social media for a bit. And it absolutely broke my heart. I mean, and again, people are going to have different reactions, but for me, for like seeing someone who brought to life one of my favorite parts of this story harassed so harshly because she dared to be in it was just, I mean, I for me, it's a deal breaker for me in terms of like kind of the civil part of the discourse. The people that did that, I think, can just get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, there's no reason for that kind of like harassment and belittlement to the point where an actor who's playing a character, right? That's not her. That's a character she's playing, and now somehow this reflects, you know, this harassment is put on her. And I heard about that happening, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the ugliest portion of the discussion, I think.
Can you imagine being cast in Star Wars? Like any of us, just like, oh, you're in Star Wars now. Oh my God, I'm in Star Wars? That's me? I get to do that? I get to do that. And then receiving like so much like harassment that you have to just like ghost on the internet. Like, I can't imagine what that roller coaster feels like, and it kind of breaks my heart.
Well, it's not.
Ask Ahmad Best.
Yeah. Ask Anna Gunn, who played Skylar White on Breaking Bad several years back. She got so much fucking hate mail because of a character she was playing. You know what I mean? Like, the internet is full of trolls. We're not going to be able to escape them. I think all we can do is just try to be responsible guardians of civility when it comes to talking about Star Wars, at least in the mediums that we can inhabit and control, I guess, as is the case with the show. I think, though, it's getting increasingly more difficult to kind of talk about this movie. We're talking about a lot of things around it. How do we feel about making that jump to spoilers so we can just let it all out?
Do it.
Let's do it. So
punch it, Brady.
Just to recap, I do want to say that between the five of us, we have two people who really, really love the movie, and I think two of us who are kind of a little, you know, not like over the moon, but we recognize it and we liked it as a good movie. And then Will is kind of on the soft like side, but he's still on the positive side. So none of us.
I liked it because it was Star Wars, and I think that sometimes that's enough, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
We don't have a hater, so I guess we failed in finding ourselves a hater.
Well, listen, the show isn't just us. We have folks in the live chat as well.
Oh, that's right.
There's a lot of comments. Right. We haven't been able to really get to those and read those yet, because I think spoilers are going to be needed to flesh some of that stuff out. So we're going to go ahead and make that jump. If you've not yet seen Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, we're not doing plugs this week, so we understand. Oh my God, Chris, that's so distracting, you putting your hands behind your head and showing us those hairy pits. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you don't want to be spoiled, this is your time. Step away. We're not doing plugs. See, I get distracted and I rewind. Feel free to join us next week. Whoa. Okay. All right. In any event, I may have seen a bare butt there.
So, Brad, I think what you're saying is that we're about a little bit over an hour in, and the next 4 hours we're going to talk spoilers.
That's pretty much true.
Heck yes.
If I can get through the spoiler jump without seeing Mike's butt. And it's a very nice butt. Anyway, spoilers are officially fair game. Here we go. Where do you guys want to start?
Let me start by saying one thing that's not super spoilery, specific, and then we'll get into it. But I feel like I see some other people complaining, and I kind of feel the same way, that these three films, when you look at them as a whole, seemed to lack a cohesive vision, right?
Yes.
For that would go through the three films. Like, here's where we're going to start. Here's the major beats we're going to hit, and here's where it ends, and it's all going to flow smoothly from A to B to C. I feel that it's obvious that if you look at the three movies, the production of the movies did not have that, or at least even if they had it at the beginning, somewhere something went off and it kind of it disjointed the movies a little bit. I think that's unfortunate, and I hope that, maybe, I don't know if anybody will agree with me on that point, but I think we all could have been more in love with the products we got if they had a vision and a direction and arcs that were kind of laid out and they stuck to. So that's what I'm going to say about that.
I think it's no coincidence that they've started talking to Kevin Feige about getting involved in Star Wars. And
because they didn't know how to do it?
Well,
they didn't do
Kevin
it.
Feige is actually more a Star Wars fan than he is Marvel. And so he wants to get involved in Star Wars. And I don't know if it'll be a one and done for him, but I think that they need Kathleen Kennedy from the beginning should have been a Kevin Feige and keeping the story cohesive and having that
the guardrails, right?
But you need an architect.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, so here's the thing. I liked The Last Jedi. However, I think with allowing Rian Johnson to come in and write and direct and have total control over the middle movie of a trilogy, which then does kind of break up that continuity. Even if JJ didn't direct the second movie, he should have at least stayed on and
creative consultant or something.
Been part of the writing group or something.
But I don't know what happened, but behind the scenes to why it appeared to go that way. All I'm saying is it appeared to me to be something that lacked a cohesive story throughput.
So for me, the lack of cohesion for me, I think, was more related to the Star Wars fatigue. And I think I was like, oh wait, what's actually happening now? What happened in the last movie? Was that Solo? Was that Mandalorian? And then I've got all of these things now being mixed in at the same time in my head, that I think for me that caused sort of that breakdown and cohesion loss. Rather than me, because I didn't go back and watch The Last Jedi and stuff right before. So I felt I had a good idea in my head, but in reality it was still kind of fuzzy.
Well, and you also had a lot of casual fans that thought Jyn Erso in Rogue One was Rey. Because they're throwing these one-offs in between the saga movies, and it was confusing to people who aren't deep into fandom.
I think there's both a condemnation and a place that I'll give a pass to JJ in this whole thing. He's kind of famous for doing this whole mystery box thing where he says he's really good at setting up mysteries and then just sort of figuring them out on the fly later, which means that anyone that picked up the reins afterwards is sort of left with well, you gave me these story threads. Now I guess I have to do something about them, because he's not a long-term storyteller. JJ's great at kickstarting things, just following things through. But in his defense, okay, JJ wasn't supposed to originally be the director of Episode 9. It was originally going to be Colin Trevorrow, right? And so Trevorrow gets pulled from the project. JJ comes back in. And so a lot of the writing and the production on what was going to even happen in this episode did not happen until after The Last Jedi came out. So they had a very condensed time frame for a movie of this size to make this movie. And remember, you've got a lot of investors, a lot of these people who have put a ton of money into Disney, and Disney is saying, yes, thank you. Give me that money. Give me that money. And with this money, we're going to promise you a episode on 2015 and an episode in 2017 and an episode in 2019. So because of that, because they'd already taken the money from the investors and because they had this condensed timeline, I wonder if, for me at least, if JJ could have made a stronger showing if they weren't sort of stuck with this, we have to release December 2019.
Oh, yeah. It's obvious. Like I said, they stuffed a lot into the bag in a very short time. If he had another year and a half, another half a year maybe, released it in the summer of this coming year, might have been a more polished product. Perhaps, but hey, what they need is someone to come in, and they have a deadline.
Right.
They have, these are money milestones. These are not artistic milestones. For Disney, this is a money milestone.
They had 3 years to write it at least.
We gotta release this movie on this date, and so that wonderful Star Wars money is gonna come rolling in.
I think part of the issue though is that, this movie has to end the new trilogy, but it also has to end 9 movies, right, worth of a saga. And on top of that, at South by Southwest a few years ago, when we saw The Director and the Jedi, Rian Johnson was talking about the fact that, like, he had been given, like plot point notes, like the overarching, like, bits and bobs that were kind of the plan at that point. And Rian said, I wasn't interested in telling those stories. I wanted to tell, like, one tiny little, like, slice of things, and that was the Rey and Kylo thing and stuff that was happening ancillarily. So now this movie, I feel like, is incorporating some of those plot threads that were left, that were dropped, that he wasn't interested in telling. And I get it, he's his own filmmaker, he wants to do his own thing, but man, I think that's a lot for JJ to come in and now have to do not only the last movie, but, like, all this other setup for things that, like, were part of the original loose plan, as it's being called. I think that'd be a hard spot for any filmmaker, whether it's JJ or Colin Trevorrow or whoever.
And there's a little bit of it that comes from the fact that I think a lot of this movie, even though they had a longer time since Trevorrow got dropped, I think that there was some, if I'm being generous, revisionist writing that happened post The Last Jedi. If I'm not being generous, I might even say a little cowardly, kind of in the way that they handled some of the pushback from The Last Jedi from a small but very loud part of the internet. And those things, I think, were the most distracting elements of this movie. The things where they actively sucked up screen time to retract a thing instead of just moving it forward. For instance, you have a lot of, one of my biggest problems, I think, with this movie is you've got, I feel like we've got side character fatigue here. You've got a lot of characters who are introduced that do absolutely nothing in terms of, like, the overall narrative. I think the one that is, like, sort of most damning for me is Jannah, who, nothing against Naomi Ackel, I think she did a really good job with the character, but the character didn't really have a purpose. She was just sort of there to be another person for Finn to maybe have chemistry with. I don't know. Also with Zori Bliss, who I think Kerry Russell did an amazing job of, but if you take that character out of the movie, if you take Jannah out of the movie, if you take Dio out of the movie, all of which are fine characters on their own, the arc of this movie doesn't necessarily change. And you have to, and so I feel like some of this is like, we don't want to deal with these other characters. Here, I've got some new characters. Check out these things. All of that aside, Babu Frick is amazing. So I will always, I will always stand Babu Frick.
That's a cool new character, right?
But Jannah was filling in the role of the primitive character type that fought against the Empire, much like our Ewok friends in Return of the Jedi.
Now you just brought up one of my eye roll moments. Thank you very much.
So in the chat,
as soon as I mentioned Andor.
In the chat, Hamstruck has given us a wall of thoughts, and that's so awesome. Thank you, Hammy. We can't read them all, but one thing he did say was JJ didn't need to set up new things in this movie. He should have accepted the challenge that Rian Johnson laid in front of him, or left it up to someone who could rise to that challenge. And Jim, you mentioned you absolutely disagreed on that point. Why do you say you disagree there?
Well, I mean, it gets back to the point I made at the beginning of spoilers. Like, I assumed that there was a vision that was put into place with the first movie, right? And for another director to come in, the second movie, and kind of derail from some of those things, that doesn't mean the next guy has to pick it up and like make a duck out of that. I mean, well, yes, he has to make a duck out of it, but he doesn't have to necessarily follow those plot threads exactly the way the second guy thought. What you have now is you have a mess. Like does he follow those tangent plot threads? Does he do a half a movie about Canto Bight? Does he, I mean, that doesn't make that isn't going to make anybody happy. So now he's got to just make the best movie he thinks he can make that's going to please all of the people who have a stake in this. Disney financially, please at least as many of the fans as he thinks he can please, because it's such a divisive fan base. That's what he's got to do. But I do not believe that if a director comes in and says, well, I'm going to turn this character bad now, and now when you make another movie, you have to continually treat him as bad. Maybe not. I don't think that's an absolute.
To be fair, right? Like if Rian Johnson didn't have to pick up the plot threads that JJ gave from The Force Awakens and carry those through, why does JJ have to carry plot threads from Rian Johnson through? Like, isn't it the same thing?
I'm just saying there should be. No, I'm just saying there should be. Well, maybe I assumed that the first plot threads that were laid down in the first movie were the vision for the trilogy. That's what I assume.
I think there's also difference too between like whatever plot threads were like in notes and memos that were passed behind scenes versus plot threads that actually appeared on screen. I think Rian Johnson took all of those like mystery box items that JJ put out there and he moved forward and told a story with them. He didn't like backpedal on a story or like take a story element and reverse it. Whereas I think JJ did. I think JJ took a few different things here and was, in my mind, disrespectful to kind of the last film by just sort of like tossing it away.
Kind of like tossing the lightsaber over the shoulder at the beginning of The Last Jedi. I get you.
Which was a good element. And I do think that like one thing I will say to this movie's credit is I think that of the different things that it discarded, I don't think that it discarded Luke's arc. I think Luke's arc in The Last Jedi is my favorite part of Luke's arc overall. And I think that what we get to see in this movie was not a reversal of that and is instead an extension of it. The things that Luke learned from The Last Jedi sort of in like, I've made these terrible mistakes in my judgment and I've regressed because of them, but now I've learned sort of like what I need to come from that. I think those things informed the way that he did Force Ghost things here. So there are things I wasn't happy with JJ about, but I was okay with him with like the Luke stuff. So
question for Chris or Mike, to that point. So Rian Johnson, in his film, basically took the thread of like Rey and who her parents are. And is she a Skywalker? Is she a Kenobi? Whatever. And he was like, no, let's tell a different story. You're nobody. You come from junk traders.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Let me finish my question. Do you feel like that actually was Rian Johnson's plan and that's what he meant? Or do you feel like Kylo Ren was an unreliable narrator and the plan all along was to reveal that she was someone special? Like, special-er, I guess, because of her lineage.
I think it's a mix of both. I do think that Rian Johnson wanted to say that she was nobody. But I do think all along from the beginning, the plan was that she was going to be from somebody. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if her being related to Palpatine was the initial plan. There are some hints to that, even in the Force Awakens, in that last battle on Starkiller Base in the snow, and she's doing like that jabbing kind of thing with her lightsaber, and she's getting that kind of like growl in her face. Even in the book, unfortunately, unless you've read the book, people aren't going to know this, but when she's fighting him and she bests him, she hears a voice in her head saying, "Kill him."
Oh.
And that can be looked at now as, Palpatine. And she, like I said, her fighting stance was the same as Palpatine's in Revenge of the Sith. So there are things there that I think lead to where we are now.
I think Star Wars has a long and tried and true history of lineage misdirects and surprise reveals. So that it changed, in this final movie, I was like, at first I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, of course, because it is Star Wars and it makes perfect sense in this universe.
Yeah,
so I
in the
didn't
Empire
feel...
Strikes Back, there's no way that they knew that Luke and Leia were related.
Mm.
Yeah, they did. I think I've read some things where that was each of the reveals in the original trilogy happened within the reveal. Look, I'm not a fan of the fact that they took away that anyone has the potential to rise up against resistance, and sort of for me made the universe feel smaller because only the special people are part of these specific lineages. That's not a thing that I enjoy, but it's not one of the things that bothered me about the movie. It's one of those it's a minor eye roll, but fucking whatever, it is what it is.
Isn't that predicated
I think
a little bit on a misunderstanding, I guess, of how Force sensitive people work? Because in the prequel trilogies, there's thousands of Jedi running around who aren't Skywalkers and Kenobis and Palpatines. They had whole teams of Jedi going from planet to planet looking for Force sensitive kids, just like Broom Boy, as Hammy called him in the chat. It wasn't just those super special people.
But they're not part of the saga. They're not part of the story. If you really think about it at this point.
So you meant a main character.
Sure, because when you're talking about a story, you're talking about whoever the through line characters are, right? You're talking about in terms of the Force users, the Force user through line characters of this are all Palpatine related, Kenobi related, Skywalker related, or Yoda related. Those are the only four kind of core lines in some way, shape, or form. You can make an argument maybe for Mace Windu or what have you. But to me it makes the universe feel smaller. But again, if that was my only problem with the movie, it would be whatever, because then if this was a really solid movie, I feel like it could have sold me on that point. That's the thing. You can give me a fucking really bonkers twist if you sell me. But my problem here is I think much more structural. You have a lot of side characters that are introduced for no reason, for me at least. And the trade-off is a lot of these characters who I think are supposed to be our main characters, I feel like they had a lot to do in this movie, but they didn't really have anything that gave them growth in this movie. For example, Finn. Finn is my biggest problem with this movie. Finn is a character who, in the first movie, his arc was, I'm a stormtrooper who has learned to kind of turn his back on that because of my friends. In the second movie, he has this arc that is, I changed because of my friends, but actually I have a higher calling now, and it's because of the resistance and doing the greater good. And in this one, his arc was much more about, I want to tell Rey something. Poe is promoting me, and now I've got chemistry with this new girl, and it's segmented. There's no arc for Finn. He has plot points, but he has no arc within this movie, which means that now if you're looking at this entire trilogy, he doesn't have an arc within the trilogy. I think Poe is the exact same. Poe, his arc in this particular movie was there more so than Finn's. I've got to learn how to be a leader, but he didn't really take any of the lessons that he necessarily learned. He just sort of gave orders and things happened. And I feel like for me, structurally, there's a lot of things in this movie that could have been done to expound those things. You can take some of those, like, this is an action-packed movie with a lot of adventures and whip, zang, whatever. I think some of those moments could have been used to make our core 3 characters grow and learn and have a very satisfying conclusion to their arc. Again, at least for me, but that was a big problem.
Hey, Jim, you were
I think
you were kind of
I think the issue was that there were no other Force sensitive characters. Well, and then we talked about Finn, and interestingly enough, I think Finn was one of the characters that in this movie they started to introduce some hints, maybe not plot points, like have him do something huge, like move a boulder out of the way or something, but like he was definitely Force sensitive in this movie. And that's a character growth point that we did. And he's a main character that we did not get. And he, as far as we know anyway, he's not a Skywalker. He's not a Palpatine. He's another, right.
He's a secret.
Yeah,
he's
right.
a secret.
Thank God
Windu.
there isn't another movie, right? But I think there is. And I don't know. I think that, again, like you said, it wasn't an issue for you in this movie. It wasn't an issue for me either. Because as much as, Broom Boy was a cool idea, I think we already knew this. This was not a revelation that there were other Force-sensitive people in the universe, and they didn't have to be connected to one of the families. It was done before, and it was just kind of a coda at the end of the movie to remind us that does happen. And in this movie, sure enough, we get Finn, one of our main characters, who I think, we'll never see it probably in another movie, but I think we're coming to find out that he had some Force sensitivity.
Well, I like the idea that they put together too of this Force dyad that Rey and Kylo.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That Rey and Kylo kind of created this yin yang, and that coming from light and dark, brought them together in ways. I don't know. I like where they went with this.
I think that's a really good point, because I know I mentioned before, like, Kylo was the one arc that I really liked in this movie. And I feel like JJ has always had, like, of all the different characters, I feel like the best understanding of what he wanted to do with Kylo. In terms of, like, overall arc. We got an arc in the first movie, which is basically like this character who was fueled by rage, but it was unfocused, and he has to make this, like, ultimate decision which pushes him over the other side. In the second movie, we kind of get the temptation of Kylo and the galvanizing of his belief system. And here we get to see him do what I kind of wish more of the characters got a chance to do, which is we had a character who started a very specific way, who was tested in his decisions and his opinions on a few different places. He had successes and he had setbacks, and he had ultimately, like, sort of the, come to space Jesus moment where he has to sort of figure out what he wants to do and make an ultimate decision. Like, I think that Kylo Ren, I think the most satisfying thing about going back and watching this whole trilogy is recontextualizing it. I think the thing that worked for me and kind of, like, make me happier with kind of how this finale works is if I recontextualize this as the trilogy about Kylo Ren, I think he has the strongest through line and the strongest arc through. So I think when I rewatch this as part of that arc from that angle, I might be a little softer to it from that angle, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Jim, to the point that you had raised a little bit ago, I actually just read something online. Apparently, over the weekend...
Oh boy, we're in trouble. Online.
Over the weekend, JJ was at a film screening of this, and there was a Q&A that happened afterward, and he was asked, what was Finn going to tell Rey? Was it that he loved her?
That was
and
weird.
And JJ officially confirmed he was trying to tell Rey that he was Force sensitive. So good job picking up on that. I guess that element in the movie. It seems like you were maybe right about that.
I wish they had followed through on that a little bit more. I wish, because a couple of times during the movie, he's like, hey, I got to tell you something. And then, like, it would skip on to the next, and he never got to. And I was like, what is it?
It's kind of some J.K. Rowling shit, though. Like, kind of like the, if you don't put it in your movie, it's not canon, like, and in this particular case, like, I kind of take issue with that particular point. Though I read it, I'm right there with you, but the time that he's reading it is just kind of like, oh, it looks like we're going to die. Hey, I just wanted to let you know real quick. Also, I can kind of use the Force. Like, it doesn't feel like that feels off for that moment.
Yeah, I think throughout the whole movie, they kind of like dodged a lot of romance and kind of romance building opportunities. And the one moment they had was Kylo's death kiss, which totally felt gross. I was like, dude, he just killed like thousands of people. Like, ew.
Especially in that same interview, like I think JJ said that, like, oh, but the kiss was sort of like a brother and a sister, which made that even worse.
Very Empire Strikes Back of you, JJ.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I did love this movie so much, but Chris, I think you just pinpointed like the one thing that I really took issue with. That whole kiss thing, A, it felt gross, but B, it also felt completely unearned. Like, I know when you share tragedy with someone, emotions are high and, but I just can't see her like kissing him in that moment. It seems sort of like, I don't know. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but there are other things that happen in previous films that don't seem to really mix either. And it's either like we just accept that they happen or we try and pick them apart forever. But I don't know that either way we'll get the closure we want or need.
Yeah, and I get them. I loved the Kylo and Rey. I think Rey is an amazing character. That was the one good through line. One of the through lines through these three movies. Obviously, she's the hero of this trilogy. And I also love the Rey, kind of the anti-hero kind of path that he had. And I love the stuff that they did between them when they were separated, both in the Last Jedi and in this movie, and how they did that. So credit to the filmmakers, both of them, for that point, because I thought it was well done in both movies. Like how he, especially in this one, where like he would notice something in the vision of her and he would immediately knew where she was. I thought that was excellent. And I just loved the interaction. And of course the two actors I thought did amazing. I thought, Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley as those two did amazing in this series.
It's been a ridiculous year for Adam Driver. I mean, it's been a ridiculous few years for Adam Driver. But I mean, just this year alone, like, there is a very, very strong possibility that we're talking about like Adam Driver best performance in a movie for Marriage Story. Like in a few years or in a few months, he's very likely like a front runner for an Oscar. And that's just one of his movies. And he's also, again, from my perspective at least, like sort of like the strongest through line of these movies. Like Adam Driver is just on an absolute like other level right now. I love what Daisy Ridley did. I'm a little lower on sort of like how they wrote her arc for this movie. I think this was the one where I felt like she just kind of did stuff. Like, I don't know that I didn't really feel like the arc for her as much as like things just sort of happened to her. But I think Daisy Ridley did a good job of acting those moments.
So, Mike, the Kiss poster behind you, just connecting metal threads, has taken me to a comment in the chat about the kiss, and I'm curious what you guys think. Sam B, hey Sam, says he thinks the scene where Kylo and Rey, or I'm sorry, Ben, because he's Ben at that point, and Rey kiss, could have worked a lot better if instead of a kiss, it were a long hug, and he disappeared in her arms as they were hugging. Do you think that would have been better than the kiss we got?
Yeah, I like that. I don't know about him disappearing in her arms, because that means that he'd literally have had to have died in her arms, and that could have been a little heavy-handed too. But yeah, the kiss. Yeah.
But they in the theater we saw it opening night with a full jam-packed big theater, and there were audible groans at that point in the movie when they actually kissed, and I'm like, oh, that was bad. And And the anticipation was, is he going to kiss her? Are they going to kiss? Are they not going to kiss? I hope they don't. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, it was
heavy-handed
kind of a
moments
bad
can
moment.
be fun too. A big smile crossed my face when I saw that inevitable scene of all the friends of the universe helping the rebellion, and them all showing up at the planet at the very end. I was like, oh, that's great. I love that. But yeah, it was totally obvious and totally expected, but it was still like a great
It
scene.
was super awesome. I loved it. And yes, I agree. It was super cheesy. But here's what I'm wondering. How did they get all those thousands of ships through that like red wormhole looking thing that they had to go through like one or two at a time? How long did that take?
Well, it's another thing
It'll
where
be okay, Brad. It'll be okay.
So this element is a thing where I think that they went out of their way to course correct something from The Last Jedi. When if they didn't, that would have made that make all the more sense. Because one of the things that happened at the end of The Last Jedi is like, hey, this is the spark that caused the rebellion, and now more and more people are going to maybe start, like, even if it's not just like, oh, we've got an armada tomorrow, like, it's going to be kind of the kickstart of like maybe getting some of that traction. And here in the movie, they specifically go out of their way to say, yep, nope, no, that whole thing, it didn't work. Yep, nope, we were hoping for a spark. But hey, let's go send Lando and Chewie real quick. And then 15 minutes later, they come back. Yeah, like all we had to do is send Lando and Chewie. And they came back with like everyone in the universe.
To be fair,
but at this point now, everybody's heard that the Emperor...
Right. The situation's completely different, right? Exactly, Mike. At this point, the dead speak. Palpatine has sent this message out to the whole galaxy. Like, everybody knows serious
on Fortnite
shit is going down. And the other part of that is they know like where to go to kill Palpatine and destroy that fleet, right? They have a goal, they have a place. Whereas at the end of Last Jedi, it was 12 fucking people on a salt planet. Like, they're thinking that spark is out, those people are dead. By the time I get there, there's no reason for me to even go. Versus, oh my god, let's go storm Area 51.
Well, imagine, though, if instead this movie, instead of doing a no but with that, had instead done a yes and, kind of like the rule of improv, right? Like saying like, okay, we've got this spark going, we still need to get more traction, and now we've got this other uniting cause to go. Instead, they specifically go out of their way to say, nope, it didn't work, and then just have this sort of like Avengers Endgame, like, yeah, nope, everyone just showed up there at the end. And I feel like that was the part where sort of the over course correction actually did this film a disservice. You could have done the exact same core plot points, but made it work with a more cohesive story if you had just sort of extended what was going on instead of trying to like zigzag back around.
Yeah, I that was one of the things that I know it worked for some of you, but it that was one of my eye rolling moments. Like, I figured there was a way they were going to get out of this. There was something that was going to turn the battle around, because they were obviously close to losing it. Of course, they were on their last hope, and then the cavalry comes in at the.
That was in the trailer, though. That shit seemed a surprise.
Well, I don't pay attention to those kind of details, like where that could have been. Like, could it have been earlier in the movie? I don't know. Maybe I just missed it. I don't know. But anyway, it just seemed too easy and convenient in that moment for me. And they just the way it hit me, that's one of the moments it didn't work.
I've got a bone to pick with Disney, and not this. It's not really pertaining to this movie, but it's one of those like marketing decision type things. But that message that Palpatine put out that like at the beginning where it's like, oh, here's the message that everyone heard, that sort of thing. That was released like not really through the movie, but like through a Fortnite event. And I feel like that's one of those things where like that's not a JJ thing. That's not a anyone who worked on this movie thing. That is totally like a Disney saying like, hey, we've got to get to these Fortnite kids and try to incorporate some things. But it does feel like if you have this like interesting element, like this inciting incident that you introduce in a medium that most of the viewers aren't going to experience, I think that's a net negative. I wish Disney hadn't done it that way.
So what happened in Fortnite?
Yeah,
So-
I'm not a Fortnite
Yeah,
player,
me
so I don't
either.
know.
So you remember how
heard
in
about
like
this,
the
yeah.
opening crawl it said like, oh, like
The dead speak.
Palpatine sent out
Yeah.
this thing, like the dead speak. Well, that was actually like, if you wanted to hear the audio for that, like that was released as an event during Fortnite. So like that would like that in that part of it was like in this completely separate thing from what Star Wars even is. And again, I get it. Like, you know, it's a marketing thing, but sometimes those types of things feel a little weird because like it forces you to step away from the thing and not see it as a movie and instead see it as a marketed thing. Just like when you go and you see like, oh, here's the Avengers toys at Burger King, or like, you know, Spider-Man, whatever.
Flash.
Yeah, that particular tie-in was one of those things that was like, and unfortunately it affects the thing that happens in the opening crawl, and so it makes you feel like disconnected from the movie from the first time, like the dun da 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 like starts kicking in.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
To Will's point.
oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you know, look at how the Dark Knight did the I believe in Harvey Dent and that kind of stuff. They did marketing that was supposed to put you into the movie, but it was outward marketing and
Viral marketing.
Yeah, if they had done that instead of putting it in Fortnite, but actually did some type of marketing like that made it seem like you were part of the mass resistance or people that are out there and you're receiving this message, that could have been a much stronger way to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm all for like a super good like I'd love the I work in digital marketing. So like I love good marketing. I don't like marketing that sticks out like a sore thumb, you know, like distracting marketing, because I feel like that pulls away from the product instead of encouraging the product. So yeah, I think things like that, like the I believe in Harvey Dent, like that is a really good one because it makes you feel like you're one of the voters who's possibly voting for Dent or not. And so when like those things happen in the movie, you feel into it. But knowing that the only way to like hear this thing that is, again, like the inciting incident is to either play this specific game that a lot of people didn't even like. I mean, a lot of people didn't even know that like that's where like you would hear the message from, or afterwards, I guess you could track, like people like have recorded audio of it and put it out there. But
here's how we fix this. Well, so Disney, next time you're going to do some viral marketing like this, everybody who has Disney Plus installed should get a message on their phone, on their Apple TV, whatever, and it pops up and you can watch and listen.
Major Organa, like some cryptic message about, you know, the Empire has us pinned down. Is anybody out there? You know, something like that. You know?
I'm actually surprised that. So I'm surprised that there wasn't a Mandalorian tie-in. In that they did a specific thing on Disney Plus channel this week or last week, whatever, where they moved the Mandalorian date to, instead of the Friday, to the Wednesday, so that episode 7 would come out right before. And so I almost thought that was going to be like, if you're going to hear that drop or some sort of tie-in, like that's your element. And I think that probably the future of Disney Star Wars is probably going to rely more heavily on that Disney Plus as a result.
I have a theory that the other reason why they put that on Wednesday, and this is a spoiler for Mandalorian, so be warned, but
Chris,
they show Baby Yoda.
Chris, real quick, Mike. Chris, I know you guys are watching.
Oh yeah, I'm up to date. It's good.
You're up to date? Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Yep.
Okay. They show Baby Yoda using that same healing.
Yes.
And that's entirely why they...
And then all of a sudden, the next day in the movie... Rey's using it, so people were like, "Oh, I've seen this power before." Yeah,
and that I'm on board with. I think that is a great thing. Like I've seen some unfair criticism of this movie, which is about like, oh, it's weird that they've invented like a new force power, like all of a sudden we can heal. But like, you know, look, like the problems I have with this are very structural. Like when it comes to like what level of space magic these space wizards can use, like I don't give a shit, because like it's as long as there's setup and payoff, and within this film there is setup and payoff. She learns how to do it, she uses it in a more dramatic sense, and then it comes back and is used on her. In that regard, this space magic has an arc and it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, before I know we're probably getting to the end of
Yeah,
our
we gotta
4 hours,
wrap.
but I want to. Did you guys talk about the villain issues between in this movie and between the three movies? Do you think that the discontinuity in filmmakers exacerbated a villain issue in this trilogy?
You mean because the big
Well,
bad
Hudson
villain
did.
was killed in the second movie, and now we don't have a big bad villain anymore?
Or
Well,
was he
they were
supposed to be the
they were
big bad villain? Or I don't know.
they were
Yeah.
setting up. So again, it was kind of setting up different villains because I think if we'd gone on to what like Ryan and then Trevorrow were building off, it would have been more Solo. Sorry, Kylo as the villain, and here. JJ has done some interviews where he said like it was always going to be Palpatine. Palpatine was it from the beginning. Because we have, if you're going to tie off the trilogy, it has to be the big original bad. It's hard to tell how much of that is legit, how much of that is that's what you have to say now because those are the decisions you've made. And honestly, we will 1,000% never know. I do think that Palpatine was a very weak villain for this movie. And that's not to say Palpatine's a bad character. He was a very, very strong villain in kind of the original trilogy. But I don't know what he added here for me.
They never really developed Snoke enough for me to be like menacing in a real way, or as far as like feeling he had control over lots of different elements in the movie. So not being Snoke as the big bad, I was totally okay with. I really never got on board the Snoke train.
I feel like whether Snoke or Palpatine, the villains in this movie were meant to propel the story of Rey and Kylo, and either way, I think that they did their job.
Yeah, with Kylo, I never saw Kylo. Yeah, he was a force of, he was a bad force, but I never saw him as the big bad. Just like Darth Vader wasn't the big bad, but he was an imposing force for bad in the movie and ended up being like an anti-hero. And I think it was the same arc for Kylo. He was the anti-hero. He was never, I don't think he was ever meant to be the big bad in these movies. And you're right, Mike. I think they needed the big bad just to drive the main arcs of the story, that being Kylo and Rey.
I mean,
I think Kylo could have been
was
that big
always
bad.
on a redemptive arc. Like, even from The Force Awakens, like, you can tell the whole bridge scene where he kills Han Solo, like, that was set up.
A school.
Right. That was a setup for his redemption arc. So I never bought, like, a lot of people are saying, oh, Rian Johnson was so bold and amazing in making Kylo Ren the big bad. That's not the movie, or the take, I guess, that I necessarily walked away with. So I would really be interested at some point when things have calmed down and some more details can like come out when there's not a giant like pro press tour for the movie. I would really love to hear more of the behind the scenes on how some of these decisions were made and how the filmmaker thing kind of interplayed here, because we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but I don't think we're going to get an answer for a long time.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. I'm glad that I enjoy reading the novelizations of these books because they always give some more information. The book for The Last Jedi actually had a funeral for Han Solo. I mean, so it's like I'm looking forward to finding out what else about this story is out there in the book.
All right, what'd you all feel about the Carrie Fisher being brought through to this movie?
I kind of liked it.
I thought it.
Go ahead.
No, I was just with what they had to work with. I thought it was good.
That's exactly it. Like, I think that again, that's not a thing that you can put on anyone's shoulders. Like, Carrie passed at a obviously an early time regardless, but like an unfortunate time for the production of these movies. And I think that what they did with her was kind of the best you could do. There was an arc for her, and I do like that they gave her a little bit more backstory. I don't know if that's even the right word, like mid-story. Like, they sort of they gave us a little bit of a glimpse of some of her Force training between episode 6 and episode 7. So I think My big take on this movie was, like I said there, when someone asked me, like, what did you think of that? I said, I think there were two arcs that I really liked, two character arcs. One of them is Kylo Ren. I've said it several times here, but the other one I think was Leia. I think that they gave her an arc through this movie, abbreviated, but it was an arc that started with some stuff in the past that all the way through kind of the culmination of her story and even beyond. So I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too. And I think certain decisions in the last movie make more sense now. Because in The Last Jedi, Leia gets pulled out the window into space and she has her Mary Poppins Force moment. And I remember thinking at the time, like, Carrie Fisher is dead, so, like, why couldn't that scene serve as her death? I realized there's additional footage that was shot, but it just didn't make a ton of sense to me, because I'm like, after Leia was in a coma for 3/4 of the movie, she comes back toward the end, but, like, what really does she do at that point? Not much, so why did we keep her? Well, now I get it, because with Luke dying, the plan must have been Leia was going to be, her teacher, and we see elements of that in this movie, and so, there's also, I think, a plot reason too, right? They needed to use that footage and carry it forward. So I actually thought I was going to hate the Carrie Fisher thing and how it was handled coming in, but that's one expectation I was glad was subverted.
Yeah, I agree. I really loved everything that they did with the Leia character and Carrie Fisher, and treating that with the level of respect that it deserves, both from an actor who gave her basically her career to be part of these movies, and also a character that was so strong as kind of the face of the resistance, right? So I think that it was really good. My breath was taken away. We mentioned Kylo's arc. My breath was taken away by the scene when Solo appears on that wrecked ship when he comes back, and basically they're having like almost the exact same conversation that they had on the bridge when Kylo killed him. That they're actually having the same conversation, but in a totally different context. And Kylo is maybe realizing, kind of realizing that what he's done. Kind of the gravity of what he's done, and he's feeling all the guilt for that. I thought that was tremendous all the way around. I thought it was an excellent use. Some people might say it's. I don't think it's fan servicey at all to see Solo in that scene. I think it totally fit in to serve the arc of Kylo Ren, and I just thought the performances there were fantastic.
And even if it is fan servicey, like, fan service isn't necessarily bad for, like, the ninth episode of your franchise, right? Like, you include Harrison Ford here in this for two reasons. One, like, well, we've got Leia and we've got Luke, and this is the last time we'll ever do this saga, so we might as well do Solo as well. So, I mean, yes, there's a fan service element to it, but as far as fan service elements go, I think this one was handled well because it was incorporated as a callback to a thing that happened, plus, like, it propelled Kylo's story from kind of point A to point B on his arc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Speaking of propel, I know it's nitpick, but guys, how the fuck did Kylo Ren, after Rey stole his hyper, light speed capable ship, how did he, like, get to her in a TIE fighter from the old Death Star that has no hyperdrive? Because we know from the original movies. Oh God,
here we go.
That those TIE fighters don't have hyperdrives.
Because the script said so. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, stormtroopers didn't fly either, so maybe they'd make some adjustments.
Yeah. But Babu Frick, right? Like, Babu Frick was the star of this movie, right?
I don't know that I agree with that, but he was fun.
I 100%, like, if this was called, like, the Rise of Frick, like, that would have been a better name for me.
We're gonna call it Frick You.
Because I mean, he was such a cute kid.
Speaking of titles,
I don't know. I'll tell you what.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, if there was a star of this movie, I might say it was Anthony Daniels.
I love the way they use C-3PO in these movies for the most part.
I think sacrifice scene.
He actually got something to do other than just kind of quip in with his comedic, mistimed comments.
No, that's what he had to do in this movie, but
some of it, but he had some real stuff to do.
Do you think it would have been more effective, though, him like being memory wiped, if we didn't have that line telling us that R2 might have a backup? Kind of like Chewie dying, but like
1,000%.
being alive after all? Because there was
it would have been another thing that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so this opens up a bigger can of worms for me, just sort of the plot armor for everyone major in this movie and repeatedly using it over and over and over again, that was a big emotional disconnect for me, because I was like, oh, C-3PO, I'm like, this is a great scene, like totally sacrificing yourself, you're sort of adding to the droid sentience kind of like life thing that they brought up in was that Solo, I think it was, which I thought was really cool. But then they were like, oh, okay, for sure he's going to be restored and he'll lose maybe a month of data, whatever, no big deal. But then also like Chewie dying, and it's like, oh wait, maybe he was on another ship, and then Kylo dying and getting healed, and then Rey dying and then getting healed. I was just like, okay, so it's just like a Marvel movie now, I guess. So whatever, nothing matters.
Well, especially when they like telegraph stuff. Like, so if C-3PO gets his memory wiped and we all think like, oh my god, he's like this forever, and then later on we find out that R2-D2 had a backup, like, I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, holy shit, R2-D2 would have that? That's so fucking weird. Like, that's like a very like that makes sense. So that's the type of thing where for me, you could bring that out of left field for me and it would make sense. Whereas here, as soon as they said that line, I was like, well, I know what's going to happen. Same thing happened with the Chewbacca line thing. I didn't like that he was in another transport thing because it felt cheap. But what I think I disliked more about that scene was we got the reveal of like Chewbacca appears on the ship, and everyone's just like, oh my god, he's still alive. And then after that, they cut back over to the the good guys all going like, man, Chewbacca's dead and this sucks. And all of that mourning felt very limp because that he's alive. So even just from an editing perspective, if you just swap those two scenes and we get to mourn with those other characters and then we find out he's actually alive, even if you're still going to do kind of like the cheap turnaround, you could have like had more like emotional stakes.
Yeah, you kind of figured something was up, because I'm like, oh my god, they just killed Chewie. That's insane. But there was no catharsis. There was no, other than, hey, Chewie's gone. Yeah, he's gone. Okay, on to the next plot beat. And then in the next plot beat, you find out, oh, he was on the other ship. But
yeah, unfortunately, that's another one of those where
too rushed.
I remember seeing Chewie and Lando in the cockpit of the Falcon, so I knew he wasn't dead. Because
oh yeah.
Plus, you just know in general Chewie's not dead. Like, they're not going to kill Leia and Chewie in the same movie, and you're not going to have Chewie be the only OG character left. Like, but in a saga ender, I think you have more leeway to do those things if you do it right and they carry the right weight. I think you can do those things, and it would strengthen your movie. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would have been. It wouldn't have been, as friendly, but it would have been definitely epic if handled correctly.
But it's Disney.
Right. I mean,
it's Disney.
Well, we kind of joked about the Marvel issue and the Marvel problem, but even theirs kind of saga ender had a few characters where like some major characters that they wiped off the board completely, and they did them in sort of like, for the movie, like emotional ways.
It's true, but in a property like Marvel, it's almost like the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
Like, you get to the end and you say, oh, well, we just killed off these two characters for sure this time. And my eyes are like, yeah, whatever. Just,
Hey, it's so sad.
That's the problem with that.
It's so sad that Black Widow's gone, but here's a movie coming out about her in 2 years. Get ready.
A prequel. I mean, it'd be kind of like, I mean, same thing. Like when Solo came out after Han Solo died, you don't immediately dismiss Solo because the character's dead. You're still excited to see it. Now, I didn't like the Solo movie for other reasons, but not because I felt like it was cheap because the character was dead.
No, that movie had other problems. Like we already know Solo. We don't need this whole movie about it.
That's a whole another discussion, which you can go back and listen to on the Movie Bears podcast from last year.
Yeah. And it's not that I'm not expecting characters to be brought back. It's just that it felt like it happened a lot this movie that I guess I got tired of that specific thing happening.
Like a revolving door type thing.
Yeah.
And within one film, like, I almost would rather have seen, like, I'm just making something up, but like Chewbacca actually died, but maybe they find a way of bringing Han back, because at least then, like, the revolving door goes for an arc instead of, like, just, from the last scene or whatever.
Hey, kid, I fell down a giant chasm shaft, just like Emperor Palpatine did. We're both back in this movie. How about that?
Yeah, if
they needed something to celebrate for Happy Life Day.
Oh, where is Lumpy now?
Actually, that's a good question. Do you think, what are the chances now that we have Disney Plus of them doing a Life Day celebration someday, like as a one-off special on Disney Plus? Because I feel like it's kind of high, right?
I think it
Dave
would be
Filoni
great.
I'm sorry. Favreau said he wants to do a new horror special.
Oh my God. That'll get the reception. That'll get the pre-release reception that Cats got.
I'd be okay with it, because something like that, you go into it like with a holiday special. I think you go into it knowing the stakes are low, because that's what a holiday special's about, right? It's not about like the gripping stakes. It's about like how warm you feel, and like whether you learn about the gift of like friendship, the holiday magic, and stuff like that. That's just like what these things are. So, I mean, I'd be all about it.
Well, I'm pretty sure we could probably talk for at least 2 more hours about the Rise of Skywalker and an exciting new holiday special, but I know that it's 9 o'clock here, which makes it 11 o'clock midnight for some of you.
It's 11 o'clock.
Yeah. So we probably should, put a pretty bow on it for now. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a part 2 discussion after we've seen it a second time. But I just wanted to take a few moments. I've read a lot on the internet ever since we saw the movie and seen a lot of people tearing each other down. And I just think it's awesome, even though some of us had some really different opinions in this discussion, that we were able to talk about it, as friends and hot dudes sitting around without shirts on talking about movies rather than tearing each other down. So kudos to all of you for being so, civil and engaged and just fucking awesome.
Well, at the end of the day, like, I take no joy in dumping on something that someone else likes, just as I take no joy in having like something that I like dumped on, right? So like, I think there's something to be said for like, we can have conversations, we can discuss like what we like and what we don't like and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, we should realize that, especially with this franchise, these movies have a very special place in a lot of people's hearts for different reasons. We all came into the franchise at different parts of our lives, but a lot of us, these are our childhoods. These are our nostalgia. These are warm moments with friends and family. These are afternoons playing outside or playing with our toys in the basement or whatever it happens to be. And so I think we just have to realize that when we're talking about the negatives of this, that we can't just completely eviscerate each other in the process. We cannot like a movie while also still appreciate why someone else might like it.
Definitely some wisdom there.
I agree. I agree. And the thing is kind of alluding to what I said. Will, I agree 100%. And we can have our discourse on these movies without getting into, and like I said, we all care about Star Wars, but I just think some people just are in, I don't know if they're invested, if there's a possibility to be invested too much and can't see somebody else's view, maybe, or at least appreciate somebody else's view. That's, I think, where we get into trouble, in the discourse. And luckily on this show,
I don't care what you guys think.
Oh goodness. All right. Well, guys, thank you for a fantastic discussion. Mike, you're our resident smart ass kidder, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So always love it when you guys can join us for these great conversations. Mike, Chris, really appreciate you guys taking time. I know we said an hour and a half. It's been like 2 hours and 10 minutes or something at this point. But thank you for joining us. Big thank you to all of our listeners who wrote in to help us celebrate our 7th anniversary of the Movie Bears podcast. And on a personal,
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, it just, so great to think that we've been around that long, and hopefully we'll continue to keep being around for much longer. Jim, Will, thank you for everything that you've brought to the show over the years. It takes a bear village to raise a podcast, I guess. And I appreciate all of you being part of our incredible journey, as well as for our listeners. I mean, we do this show because we have fun. We like to talk about movies with each other, but also with you. And having you tune into the live chat or comment on Facebook or Twitter or email us because you totally hated our review of a movie that you loved, that's completely fair. We'll take it. We'll own it. Thank you for supporting the show and being with us. Guys, last thing before we wrap here, in case people want to chat with you between now and whenever the next time we're on the show is. Chris, where can people find you online? And is there a project or anything you're associated with you'd like to maybe plug?
So online, you can find me at osoart on Twitter or osoart.com. There you can find the comics that I've been working on. And speaking of comics, I work for this annual festival in Chicago called Cake. So just finished sending out all the jury packets for that, and we'll be announcing who's in the show come early February.
Exciting times.
Nice.
CakeChicago.com.
Well,
Nice.
I mean, Chris, if you we'll gladly put that in the show notes. Just send
Absolutely.
us the info.
Cool, thanks.
Sounds like a plan. All right. Mike, how about for you? You might have a podcast, I hear rumor of.
Yeah, so it is the Real Game Movie Show, and we're on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, all those, Spotify. You can also get to it just realgamemovieshow.com. It's REEL. Yeah, we just wrapped up a 4-part Fierce Force Fridays where we were recapping the Star Wars movies in 4 different chunks, and then we recorded our review of the movie of Rise of Skywalker, which will go live on Christmas. So Merry Christmas, and so you can check out what we had to say about the whole saga.
Mike, I hope you get that released early on Christmas Day, because we have a long car ride on Christmas Day, and we're gonna totally make you part of our vacation commute.
I'm editing it tomorrow night, so it'll go live midnight Christmas morning.
Okay,
so
cool.
yeah.
Can't wait. Excellent. Well, Mike, thank you so much. Jim, where can people find you online?
Hopefully they know where to find me. I'm on Twitter at JJPatWest. Message me on there. Send me a direct message, or at me or something about what I'm totally wrong about with this movie or any of the Star Wars movies. We'll be glad to get in a civil discussion with you. Also find me on Facebook at Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Excellent. And Will, how about you?
Hey, check me out on Twitter at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook, William Lindis. Send me a message so I know who you are. Look for me on Letterboxd as well. Search for William Lindis there. And also check out my series there. Brad, I know you flagged it last week, but the Gay Movie Club, where I try to advocate for and raise up to the sky some of the best in LGBTQ film that I think deserves to be watched.
Excellent. All right. And you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro, or search for me on Facebook. I'm under Brad Harris. That's pretty easy. I'm the big chubby bear with glasses, not the skinny twig-looking guy with a Confederate flag behind him. So I think it's easy to recognize the differences, but if you aren't sure, just send a message and I'll confirm. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week. It's been an absolute blast. Relative to when we're recording this, the holiday season is in high gear. Christmas is in a couple days. Hanukkah's happening. All kinds of good stuff. Please enjoy the holiday season. Be safe. Love each other. And we'll see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Oh,
Babu.
there's that smooth, sexy Chris Lopez voice. I need your happy holidays on a loop, Chris.
Well, you have the means now.
Yes! All right, goodbye.